thank you. I thank you. Oh, we got the love in tonight.
Hi.
You sound very good tonight. I'm Johnny Carson, and if I don't make you laugh tonight, I'll take the responsibility, but not the blame. I've been reading those transcripts.
Yes.
Would you get my car? It's a station wagon. The way our producer is dressed tonight.
Yes.
Ringmaster. You are a ringmaster, and that's what this is. It's kind of a carnival tonight. It's a terrible feeling. You must have explained. We are without musicians, as are all of the networks who do live shows. Unfortunately, none of them do live shows except us.
Right.
So I don't know what. It's strange to look over and see all those empty seats. Now I know how Nixon feels. The NBC executives, the vice presidents and all the executives in NBC, they said they volunteered to replace the musicians during the strike, but it didn't work out. They couldn't figure out how to unfold the chairs. Well, let's see what happened. I'm looking forward to tonight's show. We have Mr. Jack Anderson, whom I have never met, but I have followed his column for years, and he should have some fascinating things to say. He's, as you know, is probably the best-known investigative reporter in the United States, so it should be quite an evening. And along that line, the president announced today he's not going to turn any more tapes over. Did you see that? Yeah. He said, that's it. From now on, no more Mr. Nice Guy. He said he did everything in his power to clear the whole thing up. And I think the gaps in the tape prove it. You know, the latest compromise between the Senate Judiciary, that's the way you pronounce that, we were talking, the Senate Judiciary Committee, did not work out. They tried to make a deal, some kind of a compromise, but the president refused the Judiciary Committee's offer. So Peter Rodino told Mr. Nixon, he says, I'll tell you what we do. If we turn out all the lights, will you put the country back? That was what Peter Rodino said, and he didn't get a laugh with it either when he said it. I'm just reporting what Peter Rodino said, so if it doesn't go, blame Mr. Well, let's see. How many of you are heavy coffee drinkers? Drink coffee? Oh. Some bad news for you. Sorry about that, but a leading psychiatrist today said that, didn't they used to call it coffee nerves in one of the commercials? Yeah. You suffer from coffee nerves. Yeah. Apparently, too much caffeine can bring on all kinds of symptoms, according to this psychiatrist. Nervousness, instability, diarrhea, insomnia, irregular heartbeat. And that's just from Mrs. Olson sneaking up behind you. That has nothing to do. Did you see who won? There was elections, you know, held around the country yesterday. Did you see who won in Ohio?
Yeah.
Former astronaut John Glenn won the Democratic Senate primary there. He had a great campaign, though. Did you know what his platform was? Well, he promised the voters prosperity and 2 jars of Tang. In every pot. 2 jars of pot in every Tang? Whatever. Now, lest you think I'm making this next item up, I'm quoting from the Los Angeles Times. They had a meeting here yesterday. Did you read it in the paper? It was a sorority called Phi Pi Epsilon. And it is a sorority, a transvestite society. If you don't know what transvestites, they are gentlemen who like to dress up in women's clothes. And they had it was the Los Angeles Times. They held a meeting yesterday. It was a very strange initiation to get in the sorority. In order to join, you have to get beat up by a surprise sailor. Or you have to fool Ed on a weekend date in Hawaii. Either one. Well, it should be a good show tonight. Well, along with Jack Anderson, we have Mr. Johnny Winters. You know whose birthday it is today? Good friend of ours. Don Rickles was his birthday today, yes. And to celebrate his birthday, he's out burning down an orphanage. He put out the candles by insulting his cake. Did you know that? Johnny Winters is tonight. Susan Sarandon or Sarandon? Sarandon, that's right. Lovely young actress. Charles Fleischer, young comedian, and columnist Jack Anderson from Washington. So thank you for coming, and we'll be with you in just 1 minute. Yes, we will. We'll be right back after this word from one of our sponsors. Thank you. Hi there. We're back. I'm just seeing what we're going to do tonight.
Yes.
Anything to report?
No, I just thought I'm going to one of our little haunts.
This is your little haunt, not my little
We
haunt.
used to go down there a lot, Fort Lauderdale.
Are you going back there?
Yes, I'm going back.
Is that the sailing regatta you go?
No, this is the balloon race, the international balloon race.
The international balloon
yes,
race?
from the Bahamas to Le Club International.
You're going to get in a basket on
yes,
one of those balloons?
Yes, little gondola and go up into the sky.
You're
but I'm
going to do
also
that?
being honored as the guest to get a load of this one.
You know, if you just get in the basket and lean back and breathe into that balloon, you'll end up on the shore of North Africa somewhere. Isn't that butane or propane what they use?
Well, it's hot air, actually. They heat the air. They have a little heating
But they have a
device.
burner in the thing.
Little burner heats the air. It's just hot air that goes in there, and then you adjust that to how you want to go, how low you want to go, how much air you want in there.
Where are you going?
The problem is you have no directional control.
You go where the wind...
That's right. You have no way in the world. If you come within 100 miles where you're supposed to be, that's considered on target.
I did that once, down in Palm Springs with Don Picard.
Yeah.
Remember, we went up in a hot air balloon. We landed in an Indian reservation somewhere.
Yeah.
It's true. You come down wherever the wind sets you down. And it costs us $1 a piece. Because that was the fee to get into the Indian reservation. But that's quite a thrill. The quietness is absolutely
sensational.
Great.
They have named me, I think this is very nice, the Chamber of Commerce of Fort Lauderdale, the Ambassador of Goodwill of Fort Lauderdale.
The Ambassador of Goodwill?
Yes, because I'm always talking about Fort Lauderdale, and I go there frequently, and I like it.
Are you going to get an indignity for that? They
I
give
get
you a free
special
balloon
award.
ride?
I have Saturday is Ed McMahon Day in Fort Lauderdale.
Well, that's a good title for it.
Isn't it nice?
Since you're there.
I'll be there anyway.
It'd be pretty
sure.
dumb to name it something
But
else.
I will say hello to a lot of your old friends. There certainly are many of them there.
Thank you. Okay, let's move along. Here's another book by Alvin Schwartz.
Oh, golly.
And I never knew that Alvin
They
Schwartz
can't come out fast enough as far as I'm concerned.
had put out a book before.
Yeah.
But it is a rather interesting book. It has to do with superstitions and old wives' tales and certain cures for particular things that I guess are
What's the title of this new book?
It's called Cross Your Fingers, Spit in Your Hat. Remember when you were a kid and you walked down to step on a crack, break your mother's back, all of those type of things? Well, they're kind of superstitions and myths and, what's the word I want? Remember when you were a kid, if you had a cold, you'd put a bag of, asafoetida? How many of you remember that?
I don't remember that.
Around your neck.
Really?
Or your grandmother would make
that.
up some kind of strange potion and hang around your neck in a little bag.
Asafoetida?
Asafoetida.
I got through all my childhood without ever hearing that.
Well, that goes way back,
back?
even before our childhood.
Okay.
For example, let me give a few here.
These are like little medicinal aids or guidances for life.
I thought I explained it fairly well.
Well, you were groping. You said, what's the word I'm looking for?
Well, and you didn't come up with it.
Well, you had that bag around your neck.
Ailments and cures. If you hang a string of onions in your house, or wear a dime or a camphor ball around your neck, or carry a potato with you, or rub your feet with garlic, or stand in the first rainfall in May, you will be healthy. And you will be alone also. That doesn't say that. If you have stiff joints, you are in need of earthworm grease. Dig a dozen worms and simmer them in a skillet. Then pour off the worm oil as it collects and rub it into the stiffness. These are all for real. If you catch a cold, fry some onions, mix them with turpentine, and spread them on your chest.
Ooh.
Now, how many of you have heard of it? If you have a sore throat, wrap a piece of bacon around your neck. Or use a dirty, sweaty sock a healthy friend has been wearing. If the foot of the sock covers the soreness in your throat, you will absorb his health and recover before you know it. If you catch the chicken pox, lie on the floor of a chicken house and get somebody to chase a flock of hens over you. That one I've never heard. If freckles cause you to suffer, wash your face in watermelon juice or in buttermilk, or in the water a blacksmith is used to cool a hot horseshoe. If you can find a blacksmith that's got a hot horseshoe nowadays. If you have warts, whirl a strip of bacon around your head until you get tired. Or rub each of your warts with a bean, a pickle, an onion, a potato slice. Have you heard of these?
No.
Or the skin of a chicken gizzard. These are... Or find a dead cat. And when the next moon shines, take it to the cemetery and swing it around your head 3 times by the tail and bury it then, and you will never again have warts. Now, those are just a few things compiled by Alvin Schwartz in a book called Cross Your Fingers and Spit in Your Hat.
I love his books. It's amazing. That's not a large book. I mean, the size of it is relatively small, but it's amazing how you could cover all of the old wives' tales there ever were in one book like
Well,
that.
you know Alvin Schwartz, and he's always been slipshod in his work.
He didn't cover them all?
We found some more that Alvin missed.
Oh, unbelievable.
Yes, we did.
Weren't in that book.
They were not in Alvin's book. These are folklore cures. If you suffer from malnutrition, eat some food. He didn't have that.
He
in the
didn't
book.
have...
To cure hiccups, kiss a speeding train. If you're in a coma, have someone hang you upside down in the tree with your mouth open until a squirrel stores his nuts in your cheeks. If you have a giant boil on your neck, tie yourself to your wife's rear fender and have her back into a bus. Alvin didn't have any of these in the book. If you catch German measles, lie on the floor, rub your face with knockwurst, and have a guy named Adolf click his heels on your nose. If you're impotent, tie a rabbit's foot to your shorts. It's an old cure. Not in the book.
Not in the book.
To cure athlete's foot, spend a day wearing socks filled with chopped chicken liver, then undress in front of a hungry cat. For a hernia, sit in a fondue until it hardens into a cheese truss. If you have a hangover, have someone hold a chicken 4 feet above you until she has laid 10 eggs on your face. If you suffer from irregularity, eat hard candy while you fondle a cork. If you suffer from a social disease, you squat in a barrel of kosher pickle juice and sing, "Go away, little girl." Anyway, we should give credit to Alvin. It's a charming book, really is. Superstitions and other beliefs collected by Alvin Schwartz. Cross your fingers, spit in your hat. Thank you, Alvin, for kicking us off. We'll be back in a moment with Johnny Winters, Jack Anderson, and Susan Sarandon tonight. Crazy mood tonight. My first guest is a good friend. He's an ingenious man when it comes to comedy. He's just recorded an album with, get this, who do you think with? Richard Burton.
Wow.
Of The Little Prince, which will be released, we'll find out when it's going to be released. Would you welcome Johnny Winters? Jonathan?
Thank you.
The moment I thought you got out the old Army uniform there for a second.
Well, I was in my basement when I got the call. And so I dropped everything.
Right.
There were some squirrels and some things caught in the vent. And so I said, just stay where you are, gang.
You spend a lot of time in that basement because that's where you do all your painting.
That's where I do all my,
Yeah.
I'll do a lot of meditating down there.
Yeah.
Which is thinking about jobs, really. And,
They don't have many basements in California. You're from the Midwest, like
That's
Ohio.
true.
I'm from Nebraska, and every house had a basement. There was something secure.
That's right.
And give you a feeling of strength, and you go down to the basement to meditate or fool
That's
around.
very true. There are very few basements out here in California. Ours, when the rains do come, our basement floods, And it's always fun to go down there early in the morning to witness about that much water in the basement to see some of your favorite works of art floating. You really have watercolors very fast. And of course, the furnace automatically shuts off, and I automatically don't know how to turn it on.
Are you bad at things like that around the house?
Very. I have I have no mechanical sense at all.
No, that's strange because you're an artist, and as an artist, you should have certain proportions.
No, I know nothing about cars. I couldn't. When the thing stops, I get out and leave it. Just put a sign on it. It's yours, fella. You see what you can do with it. And guys take me left and right, with the exception of a few friends who are kind to me, who say, we'll fix it for $16.95. Most of the time, the guy just a little, his eyes light up when you say that the refrigerator's on the blink, and he says, well, I think we can handle this. And you know the guy's going to add a little section to his mobile home.
Drapes for the bedroom?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
He's going to get a color TV set at night. And I always ask the question, which is so ridiculous, what's the matter with it? And which is standard for all of us, What's the matter with it? And he never gives you a simple thing. Well, this was normally... Right away, that's going to be big figures when he says normally. Normally, this would be a minor job. But I think, boy, listen, and the parts are real hard to get for this. This will run about $116.36, and I'm letting you off easy. And then he looks at his little funny partner, who is on a tight line, and the guy goes...
Right, Rudy.
Oh, boy, yeah. But I am cursed from the standpoint that I have no mechanical sense at all.
This got into basements, I don't know why, but as a kid, I remember the Midwest. That was the sanctuary.
Oh, yeah.
You'd go down, you'd make lead soldiers, or you'd have your girly magazine squirreled away in the coal bin somewhere.
Sure.
Did you ever do that when you were a kid? Shovel the coal into the old...
Yes, I had to shovel a lot of coal. And it's not much fun, really.
Yeah.
Again, you get up around 5:30 in the morning. When I was first starting in radio, I used to have to get up around 5 because the program started at 6. You got up about a quarter of 5. And we had to bank, what we call bank the coal. And
to keep it going overnight.
To keep it going. And I remember my wife, seems to me, several times came close to getting malaria because I would bank it and get it up to an all-time high of about 116. She'd wake up, oh, my Lord, what's happening? The heat is... and this would be January or February when normally it was 5 below. And I'd say, well, sweetheart, you're in bed and I have to work and...
Bank the furnace.
So you've got a little fever going for you, but... No, I used to carry coal as a kid. I remember we had the little coal furnaces, little fireplaces. Yeah. And
little shuttle.
A little coal shuttle, right. And carry those up, which was...
Yeah, we come out of the same...
Oh, sure.
Right back there. You tell me about this thing I mentioned about doing an album with Richard Burton.
Oh.
The Little Prince.
Well, it was very interesting. I think, of course, and I'm sure most people out there would agree that Richard Burton is one of the finest actors we've got in the world, which is a very heavy statement, but I think very true. He's a fine actor and a very interesting guy. Interesting thing, or not very interesting, vice versa, you can take it either way. We're one day apart, same age, almost. He's 48, I'm 48, he's November 10th, and I'm November 11th. We're a couple of Scorpios, and in case you people out there are just going through some quick little pages, we're Scorpios.
I'm a Scorpio.
Are you a Scorpio?
And the same age as you are.
Strange, wild people. But he came in. We started recording around 10, and Richard came in. He had a little bit of a glow on.
He does nip once in a while.
Yeah, he has a little touch apparently now and then. And but he was really performed very well. And we had Jim Backus was on, John Carradine, and I played, I don't know how many people are familiar with The Little Prince. It's a lovely book. It really is a beautiful little story and good for all ages. I mean, I would imagine, I guess if you're around 58, you might be a little bored with it. Because of the pictures aren't the pictures that a 58-year-old person would want. But it's a lovely, lovely story. Yeah. I played the snake and the lamplighter. 2 parts. And
well, what does a snake sound like? How did you get into a snake
that's
voice?
interesting.
I was going to say.
I did a little kind of a hiss, sort of to talk like this, and I've forgotten what voice I used for the lamplighter.
It wasn't a feminine snake.
No, I didn't use that. I remember I used that in the service one time.
Just when they said we're going overseas tomorrow.
Yeah.
Oh, so you silly.
I walked up to a full bird one time, and full colonel, and turned to him, I said, "Isn't it an unusual day for an attack?"
And right back to the bunk. Right into the hospital there. Papers, and you're on the train going home to Ohio.
Yes, right. Very quickly. Very quickly.
I got to take a break already? We're going to come back. You got a couple of pictures here we want to talk about. Fred, you said you're doing something new that I want to see.
Yes.
Some little ink drawings. But we have a word from Toyota, small car specialist for 40 years. Well, we're talking with Johnny Winters. What were we talking about? We got into your paintings, didn't we?
Talking about, working down the basement. It's kind of interesting. A lot of people probably question it whether, I really paint in the basement, but I do. It's not a very chic place to paint, as I pointed out, but I find an interesting thing happens. A lot of artists will tell you, and it's very debatable, and probably most of the artists are right about that, that you should have a great north light and a very, very spacious studio and stand at your easel and do all these little goodies, which I find for the most part is true. That is, if your mind doesn't wander, and my mind tends to wander. So I am in very
like the
small
confinement
quarters.
of the basement.
I like the confinement.
That's security.
Having been confined several times. And so,
Not too far away from home.
Exactly. And so when you do come up out of the basement, it's a little bit of a treat, a release. And you're kind of thankful, hey, I'm not down there for...
It's like the papers have been signed and you're out, of course.
Exactly. So you're kind of an outpatient, you come and go as you please. But it's a great little place for me to work. I've
you got some new things
last
here.
night you had Don Kingman on.
Yes.
An old friend of
I know
yours,
he is.
and a friend of mine. And
One of the fine watercolors in the
he's
world.
a great guy, wonderful little guy, a great sense of humor, and he's a lot of fun and excellent.
This is new for you.
I'm working in inks. These are
we'll get a shot over there.
Various ink pens, and they really give you bright colors. That's an unusual title. It's called a whale.
A whale.
Whale with teeth.
And a very colored, multicolored whale also.
But I'm a lot of influenced by the Indians and Mexicans and the Aztecs. South Americans do a lot of, as you know, bright colors with cloth and with their artwork. This is called, what is this called? Bird with a split personality.
Seems logical.
Here's a religious bird standing on a religious turtle. Here's a man who hasn't got it all together. He's dressed up for something that just isn't going to come off. This is called a kitty who isn't paying attention. I have 2 more. This is pencil. This is not any. This is pencil. I don't know how much of it. This is called Hollywood Pool Man.
A little fish.
A little fish throughout his body there, and he's kind of far out with a strange little face.
You're selling fairly well, aren't you?
Oh, yeah.
Since your art show.
Fairly well. This is called An American Easter. Titles are a lot of fun. People say, well, I don't understand. Where's the bunny and the eggs and things? But there's a lot of things going on in there, and you just that's the great thing about surrealism is that you see what you want to see. And
were you influenced by Dolly or anybody?
I have always been a great admirer of Dolly's. I like...
Most people forget that he is a fine, technician, and when he draws realism or does a seascape or something, it is absolutely startling.
He's a great, great painter. Paul Klee is another guy I've always enjoyed, and I have great respect for Magritte, René Magritte, who was a Belgian painter and surrealist who has great humor and a great painter.
What do you think of art? That generally the prices nowadays has become absolutely fantastic, you know, and paintings will like the Vermeer that was just returned in Ireland for $4.5 million for one painting. People, they find it hard to put that kind of a value on something.
I'd be a little scared to own something like that. I think
hang it on your walls. Can you imagine having a $4 million painting on a wall?
Yeah. I think that the thing to do would be to build a concrete room, you know, blocks about this thick, walls, and just put the painting up on that and visit it once a month, you know, under heavy guard, and just sit there with a flashlight or whatever, and just look at it, you know, and then say, "Okay, boys, let's go upstairs," and lock it up again. But that's no, it's when you get up around that kind of money, boy, it's a lot of money for it.
It is incredible. Where are you going on vacation? Did you take that trip that you were talking about?
I'm going fishing tomorrow with my boy. We're going up northern California. I've got a little piece of property up there.
Now, do you paint when you're outdoors, or is that just for the basement?
I usually sketch in the evening when my boy is cruising. Driving, I guess.
He's that age, is he?
Driving around. He's 24.
Oh. Well,
I usually lie to people when people say, "How old are your children?" I have a boy 24 and a little girl 18. I usually say they're 5 and 6. We had them late in life. But I do. I have a boy 24.
Well, at that age,
and,
you remember that age, don't you?
Well, you've got a kid. He's moving.
23.
Right, 23. But we're going fishing up north. We're going to go bass fishing, which is a lot of fun. And we're going to do that for a couple of days and see what happens. And if there are no fish there, then I don't know, we'll probably go to Singapore for a few days.
Well, you always do that when the fish aren't biting, aren't you?
Yeah, when the fish aren't biting, you just throw your air travel card on the thing. Let's go. But no, I think about those people having vacations. I guess we all do. You know what? The guy that only gets 2 weeks must be murder, you know, because...
I can remember, and I still hold my folks in great admiration for a trip they made in 1936 where they put 3 kids. So I was 11, my brother was 8, my sister was about 13, in the back seat of a 36 Ford and drove from Nebraska to Salt Lake City, up the northern route to San Francisco, down to Los Angeles, back through Phoenix, Las Vegas, Colorado, and back up, all in 2 weeks in July, in the summer of July, in July, with no air conditioning. That takes a lot of guts. Would you do that?
I don't know if I could cut that.
That's courageous.
I'd send them on ahead. I think I'd probably meet them the last 2 days. But it's interesting because I think with a great many men, I've been fortunate. This hasn't happened to me very often, if ever. But a great many men have to satisfy their wives with the mother-in-law scene, you see, and father-in-law sometimes say. And she always says, "Well, I want to take my mother again this year for at least a week. Mother doesn't like it where she is, and I want to take her." And the guy's, "Oh, please, please." "I suppose we're going to take your dad, too." "Yes, we're going to take Dad, too." And there's always a problem with in-laws of, "I didn't think we were going to go there. I don't want to go there." And that's all right if the guy would throw in some coins. But usually it's this. "I seem to have left my money at home. I don't have anything." But I can remember vacations only too well. When, like all of us, when we first started out, it was where to go. You know, you had about 50-mile radius, which is not too exciting in almost any area, especially back in the Middle West when you'd say we'd go to a place like Silver Lake. And the lake was usually dried up. There were canoes just sat in the mud, you know. And a guy would pretend, you know.
We're here on vacation.
That was exciting. And the picnics and cows and this and that. And it was always, "Are we going to Silver Lake again?" "Yeah, we're going to Silver Lake again."
I remember some of those.
And the fish were just floating on top of the water.
Hey, I hope you have a good time on the vacation. And I think you came in on short notice tonight.
Well,
and I thank you for coming in because I'm amazed at some of the stuff you're doing. And I know you got a split tonight, so I'm going to give you your paintings back, or I might put the arm on a couple of those.
Well, bless your heart.
Because I love your stuff, really.
Thank you. These things are available, incidentally.
Can actually be purchased for a coin of the realm,
and
or...
I think we could very honestly work out something.
Few doubloons.
I'm very flexible. If you're a little short on cash, some ties, some shirts, a smart ring with a Masonic crest on it.
Only if I get a tour of the basement.
Okay.
Also.
All right. Thank you,
Johnny. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Funny man, talented artist, too. We'll be back in just a moment with Mr. Jack Anderson, so stay with us. My next guest is probably the most read, I was going to say columnist, reporter. He calls himself an investigative reporter in this country. He's in over 950 newspapers nationwide. He holds a Pulitzer Prize. And as a way of introduction, I'm going to read some words, and then I'll tell you where they came from. At its simplest and purest, a muckraker is a person who rakes manure, the one commodity that in this era of food, fuel, and financial shortages is always in plentiful supply in Washington. I rake through the vast droppings of politicians and bureaucrats every day looking for the undigested evidence of their gluttony. While others may scorn what I do, I find it particularly satisfying. Those are the words of our next guest, Mr. Jack Anderson. Welcome.
Thank you.
I thought that would be a pretty good introduction to read, I think this was some Argosy and a piece you had written. That word, muckraker, to tell you the truth, I was not sure. I had a connotation, I guess, like a lot of people. It sounds like an odious sounding type of thing that somebody does, but you...
It's what Teddy Roosevelt called the investigative reporters.
Was that the first use of...
I don't mind it because we're finding out there's an awful lot of muck to rake. And I think it's best to get it out in the open where I think sunlight's the best disinfectant.
I was reading a paperback of your book, the Anderson Papers, and I found it absolutely fascinating, and especially with what is going on lately. We got so many areas, I hardly know where to start. What are you involved in currently? Have we seen the last of, well, we haven't seen the last of Watergate, but do you think there are more things to come, more bombshells, as they were using the term several months ago, or has it pretty well been unearthed and now we're just waiting for the verdict?
We're looking into more things. I think that this $100,000 from Howard Hughes could explode into a major bombshell. Mm-hmm. It's an old story. I dug it up back in 1971. But it's taken on some new connotations.
Now, this was the money that was supposed to have been held by Mr. Rebozo in a safety deposit box for 3 years and returned untouched and so forth.
Howard Hughes thought he was donating it to Richard Nixon. And it was delivered in two $50,000 bundles to the president's estates, one at San Clemente, the other at Key Biscayne. And it was turned over to the man his closest confidant. Now, that's Bebe Rebozo. And Bebe Rebozo said, well, he just stuck it into a safe deposit box and didn't look at it. It gathered dust instead of interest for 3 years. And this is a man who sees the president every weekend. Mm-hmm. He's his president's constant shadow. And he would have us believe that he didn't even mention this to the president. Now, the president had already been burned a couple of times by Howard Hughes back in the 1960 and 1962 elections over a $205,000 loan. Obviously, Howard Hughes was bad political medicine, and yet Bebe Rebozo for 3 years didn't mention it. Well, my sources had told me that Bebe Rebozo not only had mentioned it, but that the president had invited him to spread the loot around and give some to Rosemary Woods, his secretary, to his brothers, Donald and Ed.
Now, this has not been proved yet, has it? Or is this it's been suggested that is what may have happened?
This is what I was told by a White House source. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't prove it. Because I couldn't prove it, I went to the Senate investigators and said, here's some questions. Why don't you ask them? Here are the people to call in. Mm-hmm. I said, when Bebe Rebozo... When we broke the story about the $100,000, the Internal Revenue Service came in and began looking into his into the gift and what he did with it, and he got worried. And he went to the president, and the president said, "Go talk to Herb Kalmbach, my attorney." I said, "Now why don't you try to find out whether Herb Kalmbach will discuss this?" So Terry Lensner, he's a crack investigator for the Senate Watergate Committee. First of all, very shrewdly, he brought in B.B. Rebozo because there's a problem about attorney-client privilege. So he brought in B.B. Rebozo, and he said he asked Rebozo whether or not he had discussed this $100,000, whether he distributed it. B.B. Rebozo said no, under oath. Asked him whether or not he had discussed distributing it with anyone. B.B. Rebozo said no. Asked him whether he had spoken specifically to Herbert Kalmbach. B.B. Rebozo denied it. Said, well, did you consult him as an attorney? No, said B.B. Rebozo. Mm-hmm. Did you have an attorney-client privilege? Again, he said no. Then they brought in Kalmbach behind closed doors. And they asked Kalmbach, did B.B. Rebozo discuss this $100,000 with you? Kalmbach said, yes, he did. Would you relate to us that discussion? I cannot because of attorney-client privilege. And then old Sam Irvin brought out the testimony. Says, you don't have any attorney-client privilege.
It's already been breached, you mean?
We have the sworn testimony of the man you claim was the client. And he says that he didn't consult you and that you have no attorney-client privilege. So Kalmbach was stuck, and Kalmbach had to testify, and he testified that B.B. Rebozo did come to him and did tell him that he had distributed the money to Rosemary Woods and to Dawn and Ed Nixon.
So now you come to that terrible thing. You've got two stories that are in complete dichotomy, and you have to figure out who's telling the truth.
Right, and if the president had knowledge of it, this could be a major bombshell. It means that there was a slush fund that the president had something to do with distributing. They asked Kalmbach in some detail what he did. He said, well, he wasn't a tax attorney. When B.B. Rebozo had asked him about it, so he told Rebozo that he would speak to a tax attorney. And they asked him, did he do it? Yes, that same day. Well, they've checked. They found out on that day he did speak to a tax attorney. He did not give the tax attorney the names of the clients, but he did tell the tax attorney the story.
You mentioned your sources a moment ago, and that's been a constant source of irritation to the White House in Washington as to how you managed to get this information, and almost sometimes even before it's been released. And I know you're not at liberty, but how do you contact people to get information, Jack? I mean, are they within the... Obviously, some of them have to be on rather high to the top from some of the evidence and papers and things on, especially on the Pakistan-India relation fiasco of some years ago.
Well, we use a different method, I think, than most. The FBI has paid informants. I don't like paid informants. They tend to tell you what you want to hear because you're paying them. The FBI's had some disasters because they relied on paid informants. These paid informants couldn't back up their stories in court. So I don't use paid informants. And I don't use disgruntled people. I don't want people to tell me stories because they hate their superior, because they dislike their work, because they're not reliable.
You think these people give you the information because they're genuinely concerned that things are happening that they feel, in the case at least of Daniel Ellsberg, seemed to think morally that this was wrong and made a decision that come what may, I'm going to lay this out.
Yeah, they're the best. I want to get people who still believe in the country. I want to get people who also believe and understand that the country belongs to the people. This country doesn't belong to Richard Nixon. This country belongs to the people. And those... And those who work in the White House are working for us. They're not working for Richard Nixon. And I've managed to persuade one or two of that. And I've managed to persuade a couple of them that their first loyalty is to the people who are paying their salaries. And that when you get wrongdoing, when you get hypocrisy, when you get misrepresentation, when they lie and they cheat, when crimes are committed, that we have the right to know about it.
You had an interesting prologue, I think it was, to the book on power in itself. And I guess the old cliche is that power corrupts, which is not entirely true. It's the abuse, I suppose, of power that really corrupts. You said something happens to people, and I suppose it's not only in politics, is it? I suppose it's a head of a corporation, possibly even an entertainer who gets in a certain position. There comes with that a certain power and a certain ability to influence people. But you say very often some people can handle it, and other people don't handle power well. But that's the reason that they want to get in political life is the use of that power. and then it tends to change them. Do you find that as pretty much of a standard? Does it also happen to journalists now?
I think
you're in a powerful position yourself, and sometimes that being able to influence people, I suppose you have to draw certain guidelines and say, I wonder if I should put this in the column. I wonder if I should say this. You have to make a lot of decisions, I would guess, do you not?
The name of the game in Washington is power, and people will do for power what they wouldn't do for money. And the struggle over power is intense. In Washington, it's a sophisticated struggle. I'm a newsman operates in the open, and everything he does is out where everybody can see it. The great danger are those who operate behind closed doors, those who operate in secret. Now, the president never ever expected that his secret conversations were going to be draped out for the world to see. Now we know. We know how they talk. We know how they think.
Do you find, like I think Senator Scott said today, he found it disgusting, shabby, and immoral with all parties concerned? I think those were his words. And he was has been quite a booster up until now of the president. But
I think it's absolutely sleazy. I have never read anything quite like it. I've read over half, almost 2/3 of the transcripts so far. We're trying to wade through them. I have yet to find one place where they say, what's proper? What's morally right? What's decent? What's best for America? I haven't found one place.
That seems to be the greatest criticism from both Democrats and Republicans. It's not a particular partisan thing there, that nobody seems to say at any time. The word moral indignation has been raised time and time again. It says, hey, there's something's wrong here. We're not concerned about what's happening. We're only concerned about keeping this thing contained so someone doesn't get hurt.
And I've read, the president himself started off by saying this exonerates him. Now, I've read it. I think that I understand English. I'm supposed to be a professional with words. It doesn't exonerate him. It's against the law to cover up a crime. It's against the law to pay a bribe to silence defendants in an investigation. It's also against the law to order this. Well,
and it is in the transcripts, is it not?
On March 21st, John Dean reported to the president that bribes were being paid, that E. Howard Hunt, the Watergate conspirator, was demanding another $120,000.
And $75,000 was delivered as of that date, wasn't
They
it?
discussed it. The president wanted to know how much he thought it would cost in the end. John Dean said it may go as high as $1 million. The president said, well, I can get that. We can get that cash. But how will we handle it? Who ought to handle it? John Dean said, well, John Mitchell would be a good one to handle it. The president agreed. Then they went on here. I took the trouble because I wanted to get it right. Now, I understand English. Let me read what,
this is
what
not,
it says.
This is not out of context.
This is not out of context. They were discussing this thing. Now, what does this mean? The president said to John Dean, you have no choice but to come up with the $120,000 or whatever it is, right? Dean replied, that's right. The president said, would you agree that that's the prime thing, that you damn well better get that done? Dean said, obviously. Hunt ought to be given some signal anyway. The president said, expletive deleted, get it. Now, what does that mean? Now, to me, that means that the president told him to do it. Told him to go ahead and pay the bribe. Now, that's what it means to me. And we have the president saying it doesn't mean that? Well, now, this is what it means to me, and this is obviously what it meant to H.R. Haldeman, who was listening and who, right after this conversation, went out and made a call to John Mitchell, the one who had been suggested.
Right.
Then John Mitchell called Fred LaRue. Fred LaRue had in his apartment $350,000 in $150 and $20 bills. Just happened to have them there, laying around with the lettuce, and they...
Jack, let me interrupt just so we don't get too far behind. We'll come right back. Just a couple of minutes and we'll be right back. We're talking with Jack Anderson, if you just joined us, and we were just talking to each other during the commercial break here that the public has almost become immune or inured, or as these revelations come
Numbed,
up, they become numbed all the time. And you hear very often people say, well, this is the way it works. When this whole Watergate thing opened up, they said, well, all administrations are guilty. President Johnson did this. President Truman did this. Eisenhower did so-and-so. Even in President Kennedy. They all had things that went on, and this is the way the system works. And that's kind of sad to hear, that this is the way it works, so, and everybody accepts it as such. You don't really believe that it has to work, or politics has to be this way, does it?
Well, not only it doesn't have to be this way, but it's not this way. This is going to sound strange coming from me, but I have great respect for professional politicians. And I think when we look at a professional politician, we ought not to see H.R. Haldeman and John Ehrlichman. We ought to see an Elliot Richardson or a Bill Ruckelshaus. This is not the way past presidents have done. It's been my peculiar function to sort of cover the shady side of the street.
Mm-hmm.
And of all the presidents that I've covered in the past quarter of a century, Richard Nixon kept his cards closest to his vest, kept his doors locked the tightest, kept his blind down.
That animosity toward the press goes back a long way, does it not? This is one of the things that I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I've seen so many newsmen say that the reason they seem to maybe pick on him sometimes is because there's obviously such an open hostility between the press and President Nixon, and it has been going on since he first ran for office in California, that he has an innate dislike or distrust of the press, and I think that probably pushes newsmen sometimes maybe to be a little more unkind than they might normally be. Isn't that true? Because if you like somebody in office, or...
Well, when you read the White House transcripts, he hated just about everybody. There were a couple of places where he said, no one's for us, and he almost paranoid. Anybody who said anything against him, anybody who did anything against him, rivals, critics were suddenly enemies. Mm-hmm. And we have him saying that, well, we're going to use the FBI, we're going to use the CIA, we're going to get back at these people who've done things to us. Now, past presidents just didn't operate that way. You'd get a scandal. I think that we had better access to information in the Truman White House, the Eisenhower White House, the Johnson, Kennedy White Houses than we do now, and we found poor old Harry Vaughn gave a deep freeze to Bess Truman, and that used to be a big scandal.
What, didn't Eisenhower fire Sherman Adams when he got a Vicuna coat?
We dug that story out, right. A Vicuna coat, and that was big news in that time. Lyndon Johnson had his Bobby Baker, but Richard Nixon, over 24 of his closest associates, of his most trusted aides, the people that he brought in have already either pleaded guilty to crime, and many of them have, about a dozen of them, or they have been indicted for crime. Now, sure, Lyndon Johnson had his Bobby Baker, and Dwight Eisenhower had his Sherman Adams, and even Jesus Christ had his Judas, but not all 12 apostles.
We will be accused. When I say we, collectively, you've already been accused, but I will probably be accused by people now of being the Eastern liberal establishment, and I have made jokes about what is happening. I hope not unfairly, but just trying to make humor about what has happened. But that is considered, when you do that, almost un-American. Do you think we tend to place our politicians and the president on down so much in awe that we lose sight of the fact that they're a mortal man who is elected to do a job, and he's as human and has as many frailties as anybody else, but we set them almost apart so that any condemnation of the president or a senator is tantamount to heresy or something, and people go at you and say, how dare you attack the presidency? Well, the presidency is always going to be there.
That's true. Well, we have built up the president over the past 200 years. He's become our father figure. He's become our only royalty. He's our commander-in-chief, and we've built him up. A myth has grown around the office that whoever the president is, however dubious his past, however poor his qualifications, that when he steps into the White House and when he takes his seat in the Oval Office, that magically, in some way, somehow, he sheds his past and he takes on the mantle of statesmanship, and that the office ennobles him. Well, I think the office I think it ennobled Harry Truman. I rather saw him grow in the office.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he was a good president. He came from rather dubious background. And I remember seeing an old man one day shuffling along in front of the White House. He was head bent with age. He was on a creaky walking on a creaky cane. And he happened to hit the gate just as the president came in his limousine. The old man recognized him. And recognizing the president, he took off his hat and with that old head bowed, put it over his heart. And I never saw a limousine stop so fast. Screech of brakes, shift into reverse. President of the United States piled out of the back seat, threw an arm around that old man, visited with him. Harry Truman never did forget that he came from the people, that he was a servant of the people, not their masters, but their servant. I think he was ennobled by the presidency. Now, I hate to report this. Believe me, I hate to report it. I wish that Watergate had never happened. I wished I'd never had to write it. I get no joy in writing it. But it is my duty to report, and I can do nothing else. I must report. Richard Nixon has not been ennobled by the presidency. He has degraded the presidency, and that's a fact.
But Jack, I want to ask you one other question before we bring out our next guest. When Leon Jaworski was appointed as special prosecutor, that was with the blessing, was it not, of the White House, his man, and he was given carte blanche, as I understand it at that time, if I remember, whatever Mr. Jaworski needs to bring this investigation, whether it's the materials that would be furnished, and it would be a hands-off policy.
He was recommended by John Connolly. John Connolly was the one that persuaded the president to hire him.
And he was going to have an absolutely free hand. And now I understand that there will be no more material given to him. Now, isn't that some kind of a breach in an agreement?
It's a breach, and I think the public just is going to have to draw the obvious conclusion. What we now have, the White House transcripts that we now have, are the best of Nixon. Those are the things that he's voluntarily given.
The edited...
This is the best side of his case. The things that he hasn't given us yet, the things that he's withholding, the things that he's refusing to give to his own special prosecutor, that he's refusing to give to a House Judiciary Committee, I'm almost afraid to read them.
Do you think the often word use of executive privilege and national security has been rather loosely interpreted
Well,
in many of these things?
You don't find those words in the Constitution. You don't find words about all the president's perquisites and privileges. You don't find executive privilege mentioned in the Constitution. You find words in the Constitution like freedom, liberty, tranquility, the general welfare. You see, our founding fathers wrote the Constitution to protect the people from the government. The Constitution wasn't written to protect Richard Nixon from the people. It was written to protect the people from Richard Nixon.
I'm going to bring out a young lady, not to end this discussion, but only to end it so we're not accused of loading the show on one side. But it is true when you talk about the press. The press should it not have an adversary position as far as government's concerned. That has always been the idea of the press. It is an adversary of the
people don't have to believe us. No one has to believe us. But under our system, in a free country, the press is supposed to provide an alternate source of information, a rival version of events.
You do not have to choose to believe it.
And the president isn't being silenced. He can go on anytime he wishes, to speak as long as he wishes on all three networks, during prime time, without commercial interruption. He can say anything he wishes. Nobody's shutting the president up. And you got your choice. If you want to believe Ron Ziegler's version of Watergate, you're welcome to do it.
Speaking of commercial interruptions, Jack, cleverly you led me into this. We'll take this brief pause for a commercial interruption. Then we'll be back. Now to present the administration side. No, that's not fair to her. She's a lovely young actress. She's been with us before, and she played the daughter in the movie Joe and young Zelda in television's Last of the Bells. Would you welcome Susan Sarandon? Susan? I didn't mean to imply that you were politically going to get involved in any of this at all, although you may have some views on what's happening.
I just wrote him a letter.
You just wrote who a letter?
Mr. Nixon.
Do you really sit down and write letters?
I think you have to, because it has to balance... I mean, I'm sure he doesn't read them, but someone reads them. I send him telegrams. I write him more than my relatives.
Oh, may I ask in what
I just told
manner
him
you wrote him?
I didn't believe him anymore, although I never did, but I thought it would sound better if he thought that I had believed him.
I thought you were going to balance this out.
And then I said that impeachment was a safety structure of the Constitution, certainly not a threat to the democracy, and that even if he was innocent and had an uncanny amount of bad luck in surrounding himself with all these dishonest men, that he should put his ego aside and think of the good of the country and then resign.
Well, that certainly balances out Jack's side. I have a strange feeling I'm going to get a call from Ron Ziegler right after this show is over. I don't know why. Would you like to get on this? What have you been doing lately? We'll talk about what's been happening with you.
I've been working, and I've been robbed, and my house was hit by lightning. My cat died.
You want to take those one at a time? We thought the country was in trouble. Now, you got ripped off?
Yes, I was staying at a hotel here. I came out to do some...
Don't mention the hotel.
No, I won't mention the name. But they, during the night, someone came into my very room and stole a large satchel that had everything I need to live. I was planning to move the next day into an apartment.
You were in the same room when they came in?
Yes, it was at the foot of my bed, and much to my surprise, in the morning when I woke up, it was gone. All my cash, my traveler's checks, my tarot cards, my kazoo, my penknife, everything I need.
Your tarot cards?
Yes, was gone.
Aren't those fortune-telling
That's right.
tarot cards?
And so I reported it.
Didn't the cards tell you were going to be robbed that night?
And I was very irate.
If you'd have looked at those cards earlier, you wouldn't have been there.
I had done them the night before, and in fact, they had said something, the tower shows up, you know, that's something that means a very big event. I, of course, assumed that it would be something wonderful. Goes to show.
So you got robbed.
I got robbed. The police were very sweet, very Hollywood, just like on The Rookies, very cute, came in.
Are they like that, like in television?
They were gorgeous. They were real funny. They call me up from time to time, tell me that they haven't found anything.
Do they? Do they really? But they're still working on the case.
Yes.
But I don't imagine they have much...
No, they said I was actually very lucky because there'd been 40 rapes and 5 murders in that area within the last few months, and that I was lucky that I didn't wake up. And one other time someone was in my room and I woke up. I was in Germany doing a show, and I woke up. Of course, I was a few years younger. And I woke up and there was a man standing over my bed, and I said, "Can I help you?" So there's no telling what I would
Pretty brilliant right there.
I don't handle myself really well in those kinds of
Well, come to think of it, that is really not too bad. What would one say at that particular moment?
I don't know. I guess it's just my training, you know, being very polite. And he just cracked up and backed out of the room.
Can I be of any help? And he left.
No, I just said, "Can I help you?" It was the only thing that I...
That's the famous laughing burglar. And he Now, what else happened? You got robbed? And
well, my house was hit by lightning and my cat died. But then I kind of...
Was your cat killed by lightning, you say?
No, by a car.
Oh.
But then...
Sorry.
I had a good week after that.
Now for the good news.
Well, just everything went pretty calmly, you know. And then, so I thought I would try to drive in California, which I have never done, and indeed shouldn't. But...
Why do you say that?
Because I have a fear, an irrational fear of getting on a freeway and never getting off. And not, you know...
You mean growing old there and raising a family?
And not even knowing till I hit, like, Pennsylvania that I've made it, you know, that I'm in the wrong direction, because I have no concept of where anything is. There's no downtown, everything's like a big subway and city kind of combined. So I thought if I stay on Santa Monica, because that's near my street, everything will be cool, and I'll just maybe take a little drive off to the side, So I did it, and I was really fine, and on the way back, I was right near my street. I slowed down for a light. I was near a bus stop. A woman ran over, jumped in my car, crying, knocked on the window, jumped in my car, sat down and said, "I'm having a heart attack. Take me to the UCLA outpatient clinic." Well, I have no idea where anything is if it's off of Santa Monica. And I said, "Are you really sure?" She said, "Oh, yeah." She was very upset. She was crying, and she said, I have to get there because it closes at 4:30, and I've only brought my eye drops and not my anal nitrate or whatever it is." And I said, "Right, well, that's a problem. Let's try to find it."
Right.
So we started driving, and as she found out that I didn't know where I was going, she calmed down and said, "Well, you can maybe just leave me at Wilshire, you know." And I found out the crazy part was that after I talked to her for a while and she kind of stopped sweating and was more together.
Yeah.
She turns out to be a child star from the movies, and she went into her whole rap about how she had a career till she was 11, and then her chest developed too fast, and it ruined her career, because she still looked real tiny, but they couldn't pass her off for 7 anymore. And she said, God bless you, and said, just leave me at the bus stop, and got out. And there I was. By that time, I had gotten up Wilshire somewhere, and I asked a policeman, and he got me back onto Santa Monica.
That's one of the weirdest weeks I've ever heard of in my life.
Well, it's
Man
very
at
much
your bed,
like
your
being...
cat died, and...
Yeah, but it's like being in New York. It made me feel more at home.
You drive anymore now, or have you
No,
passed that?
yeah.
Let me interrupt you for a moment, and we'll be back. Here's Ed to discuss one of the problems of the American family. Just one of them. We're back. We're talking with Susan Sarandon. Mr. Jack Anderson's been our guest. This picture you just finished, was it Waldo Pepper? Was that the name of it?
Yes.
Somebody said you did your own stunts in this?
Well, I did some of them.
What'd you have to do?
Stunt woman. Well, I got out of a plane, an old plane in the air, but then I had to fall off and be killed, and we didn't actually do that.
I hope not.
But I had to walk out on the wing, and then when we
You
went
did that yourself?
Well, I did it on the rig. There, when we went to Florida to do the final things with George, very nicely saved till the last, I had to walk out of the plane on the wing, and the plane was on a rig, which was on a truck, which was going fairly fast, but there's also a wind machine that was going about 100 miles per hour. And the whole idea is that they...
It sounds like the old barnstorming days.
That's exactly what the movie's about. And they had talked me into doing this particular stunt because they needed some sex, so the idea was that I would go out and they would shred my clothes, and my clothes would blow off, and I'd be there in this little slip. Well, indeed, the clothes did blow off, including my slip, which was up around my neck.
And they got what they wanted.
Movie. Well, maybe for some out footage, but I don't know if they could.
What kind of a rating does this have?
Well, hopefully it's going to be a, what do they call it? A good rating, a family
I don't know what
rating.
they mean anymore.
Well, they
Parental guidance.
That means it can have lots of violence, but no sex.
See, I don't understand that whole business.
I don't either.
You know, you think a young child would be less affected by sex or violence in a film?
No, but obviously their parents are.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. Yeah, what else you been doing out here?
Well, I came back out to do Front Page.
That's the one where you're doing with Jack Lemmon?
Yes.
And Billy Wilder's directing it?
Directing it, he sure is.
That's been done, that's a remake of a very famous
I understand
originally.
once, yes, of a play, and I think they did a movie once, but they changed one of the men's parts to a woman's part or something. My part is actually rewritten. She was kind of dull, and now she plays the organ and sings in a movie house for Follow the Bouncing Ball, which was quite interesting because I don't sing or play anything but the kazoo. So they had to kind of fake all that. And I sing Button Up Your Overcoat. That gives Walter Matthau the idea to tell me that Jack Lemmon has been exposing himself, wearing nothing but a raincoat, to young girls in a museum, see, to try to break up
Was that
our
the
marriage.
original story? That's been updated, hasn't it, a little bit? Jack Lemmon plays an exhibitionist?
No. That's just a story that they tell. To
Oh,
try to
I
break
see.
up.
I see. I
It's
thought
all
that...
make-believe. This is the mad, mad world of make-believe.
I see. You
Yes.
fooled me there for a moment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Where'd you get this? I just wondered.
Oh, a friend sent me this flower. Sent me a plant for going on the show.
Do you talk to your plants? Have you read that book?
Yes,
Where that if you talk to your plants, they'll grow healthier?
that's true. You should hug your trees, too.
Hug your trees. And fondle your bushes, I suppose. Or anything that will make them... Anything that will help. Whatever will. Absolutely. On that rather eclectic note, we'll take a short break, and we will be right back. Jack, in the brief time we have left, what do you think will happen, if you can say in 30 seconds? Do you think there will be an impeachment? And if there is an impeachment voted, how do you think it will turn out?
Well, Speaker Carl Albert told me that he thought that about July 15th there'd be a vote. He says he's not sure what it'll be. I think we're on the road to impeachment, and I think the president will be impeached.
Thank you. I guess we'll have to wait later in the summer to find out what's happened. Thank you for being with us here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Tomorrow night, Jack Palance, Joanna Cassidy, Jose Molina, and our good friend Orson Bean will be with us. Thank you. Good night. I'm humbled by that applause.